What is up, everybody? Welcome to the After the Ride podcast. This is actually last week's episode, and if you want the newest episode, make sure to join my Patreon. To join, go to patreon.com/DanDanTheFireman. And I just want to say thank you right now if you do join, but if not, enjoy this one, and all you have to do is wait for next week. So you got the Indian Challenger.
Yeah, I just picked it up on the 26th. Well, I paid for it on the 26th.
You got the
took it, brought it home Saturday.
Nice. Yeah, when I test rode that bike, I had like the same giddiness that I got from the FTR. I mean, you saw the FTR video, right?
Right.
And I mean, you have an FTR. You have the FTR 1200S race replica. Is it called race replica or is it just like replica?
No, it's the race replica version because of the red trellis frame and acrophobic on it.
So. That's so cool. You got the first one in Tucson. You suck. I got the second one.
Yeah.
At least that's what people are telling me. Maybe I got like the third or fourth one, but whatever.
No, you got the second one.
Awesome. Yes. Awesome. I'm so happy about that thing. I mean, I was talking in my videos that I've been waiting for it ever since seeing the 750. When did you, like, all of a sudden you're like, nope, I'm waiting for that thing to come out. When is it coming out? Like, when did that happen for you?
I'd have to say when they did that one-off video where the guy was riding in the irrigation in LA.
Yeah.
I was like, they have got to make this. And then they revamped their video with all the little snippets of people saying, make it, I'll buy it. And I understand it was a whole new realm for them to build that thing. From what I talked to the reps and everything, it's not a matter of just throwing a motor in a frame and slapping some decals on it to say Indian or FTR or something. There's that the Smart Lean, or not the Smart Lean, but the 6-axis sensor that's in it, so that the bike always knows which way is down. You can't just throw that in a bike and call it good. I mean, you've got testing, and the problem with testing and getting all the bugs out that some consumers have issues with is that they think that they covered the whole spectrum. I mean, riding styles vary from person to person, and that test rider for Indian may never do what you and I do on our bikes on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So for that input not to be there, it just doesn't show up. Of course, everything new has bugs, but all in all, I think they wanted to do a sound release in the U.S. because I believe Indian's always been scrutinized. They've always, well, you're owned by your father company, Polaris, so you're not a real motorcycle. It's like, well, that's not true. I mean, when they bought the Indian name, they sat on that name losing money for over 18 months before they even put a vehicle into production. So that just shows commitment. I mean, anybody can throw a motor into a frame and call it an Indian. They did that twice and it didn't work out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I have a tough time sitting on a video for like 2 days because it's like I want it out now. So I can't imagine sitting on the Indian name, which is this huge brand, for 18 months. I mean, they could have just seriously thrown one of those like victories and just literally just flip a logo and then be like, hey, it's an Indian, and then people, so they were smart about that. They definitely were. Yeah. And I think when it comes to their product line too, I mean, they don't put out like a new bike or like 5 new bikes every year. No. Like, they put out a new bike that they've done testing for years and did research. I mean, it sounds like they're pretty smart when it comes to that.
Yeah, and they're very close to the chest with their information. They don't let out much, if at all, or they'll leak it deliberately. Mm-hmm. The word about a fixed fairing bike like the Challenger, they leaked, and they just leaked some pictures out. I mean, they could have done closed course, so on and so forth, but there was no mistaking it was an Indian just by the engine that was sitting in it.
Yeah.
I'm glad they refined it to the point that they did, because it does look a lot better than some of their original pictures. The bike itself, with like the Smart Lean technology, I just see them going forward with that in all their vehicles. It's
smart.
Such a exactly. It's taking even veteran riders that we get ourselves into predicaments that if you had a little help from the bike instead of relying on all your knowledge and everything at a split second, and the bike can do it. People, well, I don't like ABS because I want to have full control. Well, ABS has time and time again proven itself to
Yeah.
be reliable and
It
useful.
keeps you in control, especially on the street. I mean, I can understand on off-road dirt and all that stuff. It's like, let's
Yeah,
take ABS off. But man, when you have pavement or a hard surface you're riding on, ABS, it's huge. It's huge.
yeah.
It
And a
definitely is.
textured surface will change the ride in a split second.
Yep.
Sand in a turn that hasn't been there for weeks is all of a sudden there. I mean, come on.
Yeah. How much do you know about that six axis thing? Because that was something interesting that I went from a Harley that had zero rider aids to all of a sudden I got wheelie control, traction control, I got lean mitigation, I got crazy stuff. I can turn all that off and turn some things
Yeah,
on. Like for
yep.
you, I mean, you have the challengers. I mean, I didn't dive too much into it, but how does that work with you? Like, do you like that stuff? Do you think that's something that people are going to be doing?
It's an added safety precaution that I believe that was well needed to incorporate into a heavier bike.
Mm-hmm.
They actually have a video out about the smart lean technology from Indian, and it actually shows the guy dumping the bike by locking up the front wheel in a turn. And they explain the way the whole process works. And the code that they have to write for these bikes for this information to be translated and work in milliseconds, you got to give them a break when, it doesn't seem like something's working right.
Yeah.
Their best feedback is patient customers that are willing to come in the shop and say, hey, my bike's doing this. What can we do about it? And if it's first we've heard, or if it's something that we have on a regular basis, we can feed it back to them. The engineers can sit down, start working with this, and take care of the issue. But to come in and throw your keys down and say, my bike's jacked up, fix it, that does nothing for us. Constructive criticism will get you to point B quicker,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, so that's just it's crazy how the technology's definitely moving, and I did some research on it because I was really concerned. I was like, well, like because I accidentally activated wheelie mitigation. I was like, well, how does that work?
Right.
And I'm glad it worked because I lifted that front tire up and it put it back down for me because I
Yeah.
have zero control over that. But I looked it up and it's really new technology. It's way different than like a car's, rider or driver aids. It's like
Mm-hmm.
literally they are developing things just for motorcycles, and I'm so glad it's still in. And that's definitely not something that MotoGP riders would use. I mean,
Oh, no.
no, yeah, they lean
Yeah.
and then they push it. So this is something definitely for the street and consumer riders, which that's awesome that they're doing. I think they need to do more just like that. But you're mentioning like bringing stuff into the shop. So like what is your like in your opinion your title? Like everyone asks me what are you? I'm like, well, I guess I content creator. Like I don't even know what I am. So like, what are you like in terms of? I don't even know.
Uh, by shop standards, I'm the lead tech. I've been there since day one. I'm the highest qualified except for gold. In order to get gold certification, I physically have to leave the shop and go to one of Indian's training classes to get that. It's not necessary to be able to work on the bikes. It's something that benefits the shop and the service department as far as perks from Indian. You always have to have two qualified technicians in the shop to be a Indian shop. Um, Eventually, it's going to turn into, with the volume that we have coming in, I'll become what they call a shop foreman. Uh, I won't have my hands on the bikes near as much, but I will be an integral part in all the technicians working on the bike as far as going around, double checking work, making sure that our standards that we've set exceed everybody else's.
That's good. That's cool. So as like a shop, I'm assuming as a shop foreman, I'm just guessing. I'm like equating it as like a captain or a chief in the fire service. It's like you have to know all the policies, you have to know all the like the ins and outs of certain bikes, and
Very much.
then you pretty much just walk people through a first or something, or do the techs below
I
you
will,
still have to go and understand everything?
well, they still have to do their own training to get bronze and silver certified.
Okay.
And uh, I went to school at Motorcycle Mechanic Institute up in Deer Valley in northern Phoenix for a year and a half. And other than having a 3.94 grade point average, one of my major accomplishments was 100% attendance. And that's not just showing up every day for class.
Uh-huh.
That is literally not missing 1 minute of class from beginning to end for a year and a half.
That's crazy. Some people probably have a tough time with that.
Yeah.
Shoot, I remember even in Fire Academy, if you missed more than, what was it, like 8 hours of anything, you're just out, and that's 14 weeks. I can't imagine for a year and a half. That's crazy, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm gonna keep saying in your own opinion,
Yeah.
but in your own opinion, we're gonna jump into some of the stuff that on my Discord server people are
Sure.
asking because they really want to know more about mechanical stuff. I mean, I even want to know more about mechanical stuff because
Sure.
I don't want to change my own tires. I'd rather you do it. It's like that's too much for me. I'll do my oil and all that stuff, and I think that's where a lot of them are coming from.
Yeah.
But one thing that I really like and one thing I choose when I'm looking at a bike is like I don't want a carbureted bike
Right.
just because of all the horror stories that I'm hearing. And I just really like fuel injected. I don't want to have to deal with it. But there's so many people out there. They're like, you know what? A carbureted bike is, it's its own little thing. You could actually get more out of this, out of that. And I don't understand it. So when it comes to carbureted bikes and fuel injected, like what's your opinion on that?
Consumers nowadays are always looking for ease of use. If they can walk up and hit the start button and the bike starts up, they don't have to work a choke. They don't have to wait so long for it to warm up. Um, Carbureted bikes are for people that love to, I don't want to say tinker, but they love to keep their hands on their bikes and work on them. There's a lot of extra maintenance.
Yeah.
Carbureted bikes have fuel sitting in a bowl, and especially out here in Arizona with the dryness and the heat,
Mm-hmm.
gas will go bad a lot quicker. Uh, what happens is it'll start to varnish on like the pilot circuit, which is a needle that literally drops down in and allows certain values of fuel to flow through to get put into the intake.
Mm-hmm.
That starts to varnish up. So your 5% throttle has now been cut down to maybe 2%. And then all of a sudden, when
Oh.
you crack it open a little farther, instead of being thinking, okay, well, I'm at like 2%, and you crack it to 10, now you get 10 because now you have enough flow through that varnish. Or if there's debris, um, gas takes a funny shape. It's probably one of the most volatile problems in the bike as far as when it goes bad, it turns gummy and kerosene like. It gets
Uh-huh.
super thick. It won't flow through those super small ports. When you rebuild a carburetor, you have what they call piano wire, and it's super hard, thin, and you just got to go in there and work this varnish out. Debris gets in there, it'll clog it up. Fuel injection is a lot less tedious to maintain. Obviously, if you're going to store your bike for any amount of time, you want to put some kind of a fuel stabilizer in there because the fuel's still going to varnish.
Mm-hmm.
And the holes in the injectors are super small, but you cannot do any maintenance on injectors other than to just clean them a little bit. And they're not inexpensive either. You can get it. Most injectors run like around $200 a
Okay.
pop. So like on a V twin, you'll have two. You get into your sport bikes, you'll have four. Super high performance. Sometimes you'll even have eight.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so fuel injected, a little bit easier as long as you ride it and rotate that fuel. And if you don't, put some of that cleaner stuff in there, right? Or
Yeah,
the
the stabilizer,
stabilizer.
fuel
There you go.
stabilizer.
Okay. So I know a lot of people that they like the older bikes just because the way it looks and all that stuff. And obviously, it's not fuel injected. So they're going to have carbureted stuff.
Correct.
Do you usually get some of that stuff like used bikes when they come in? Let's just throw a scenario out. So you get a used bike that is like, let's say it's a trade-in,
Mm-hmm.
carbureted, whatever it is. Like which ones were the easiest for you to work on? Like just first thing that comes to your mind, which
A
bike
dirt
was
bike.
a dirt
A
bike?
dirt bike is the easiest ones to work on. They don't have they're not put into a frame per se, and they're not covered by fairings for the most part. So in order to get to like the carburetors, usually they're exposed where you can see them.
Hmm.
There are certain models like comes to mind the SB650. It has a small fairing, and you can see the carburetors hanging on it. We had one that came in that there was no fuel delivery, and we did an old mechanic's trick of draining out the fuel bowl where the
Hmm.
fuel sits for. It's a reservoir for fuel. So when you pull the throttle, it lets the fuel run and it draws a little bit. But if you crack it too hard, most of these are gravity fed, so you don't have a fuel pump pushing fuel like fuel injected. So it's got to have fuel from somewhere. It'll bog on you. And when you do that, there's a spring-loaded diaphragm that pushes the fuel up to allow it to go into the intake when you require it at a faster pace.
Holy crap, dude! I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much right now. This is really
But
cool.
once,
'Cause, go ahead.
but once again, we hooked up a tube and we sprayed carb cleaner reverse through it,
Uh
and
huh.
it blew what was ever blocking our main pilot because it wouldn't idle. You could hold it at like 3% throttle, it would run, but as soon as you let go, it would stall, even with the choke on. So that
Okay.
tells us right there that there's a pilot needle for the idle position, and you can crank the idle up, but it doesn't fix the problem.
Oh wow. Like I said, I'm learning a lot. Like one thing that I did realize when I started working on my bike is that I actually had like I don't know what it is. Like I started to really learn how the bike works, but then that affected how I would actually ride. So like what you're saying with you'd get 2% throttle or whatever when you try to do 5. When you're out riding and you're like, man, what's that noise? What's that feel? And then you're like, oh, it could be this, could be this, and then it
Yep.
really changes things because you don't want to get used to that normal of, well, okay, well I pull 5% and I only get 2. That's the norm. It
Yeah.
really isn't, and I think a lot of new riders don't get that, including myself. Like that's not something I focused on. New riders focus on how to ride, how to do it safely, but then it really does come down to maintenance too.
Yes.
And I told you I don't change out my own tires and stuff, but have you ever seen like tires? I mean, I'm just throwing this out. Have you ever seen tires that are just like, oh my gosh, how'd you get it here?
Oh yeah, I've had them roll in and they'll say, "I think I need a newer tire." And you walk and you look and you can see the cords
Oh,
in the middle of it. And you think to yourself, one sharp stone and your tire's blown. And
oh
a
my
flat tire
gosh.
in the rear is not near as bad as a front
Yeah,
because now you've lost your steering and your braking. At least with the back tire, you lose a little bit of stability, but you can still brake.
yeah.
The biggest thing is not panic, which I'm sure you cover in your safety video. Um, but the key rule, I make money off of people coming in the shop. I would much rather change out your tire when it's due than to change out your tire, your rim, your rotor, your belt or your chain if you broke it because you went down,
Yeah.
your gas tank, your parts because I can get another 1,000 miles on it. Why take the chance?
Yeah.
Keyword is maintenance is always cheaper than repair.
That's true. That's true. And then gear is always cheaper than hospital bills. I mean, I
Exactly.
guess we all have in our own little, mechanics and then safety stuff. We have our own little niche on that one, a little
Yeah.
saying. When it comes to your bikes, let's go over your bikes, man.
Okay.
You got some bikes. You got like we already talked about the FTR. So you got
Right.
top of the line FTR, badass thing. Then you got the Challenger. Did you get
Yep.
the Challenger Limited or was it
Yeah, I got the blue limited.
That's the one I test rode, dude. That thing was
Yep.
so smooth. And then you have a Scout,
Yes, I
right?
have a 2015 first run Scout. I gave our shop an extra $500 to try to get one of the first ones. I actually got the second silver one in Tucson. I loved it. When I first came to work for the shop, I had 2 sport bikes. I had a 99 TL 1000R
Oh,
Suzuki V-twin sport bike, 1000 liter. That is a very nostalgic bike.
the way
Um,
you're looking, you're like, oh man, I remember that thing.
well, I'm selling it as we speak.
Oh
One of the
no.
guys, one of the guys at the shop is buying it. But it's one of those bikes that if you sell it, you don't want to sell it to definitely a new rider.
Uh huh.
The torque on that is ridiculous. Um, it is a heavier bike. but it's just when it starts up and them V twins are pumping through that exhaust, it's an eerie sound. People, when you start up, people will look at it like, that's not a sport bike. I've had them look past it looking for something else starting.
Yeah. You had a nice exhaust on it then, man. That's
Yeah, I got a
cool.
Yoshimura exhaust on that, which I've heard it with Two Brothers and other Vance and Hines, and it just doesn't have the same ring to it.
Mm.
Actually, Yoshimura designed that bike originally. He wanted to get into uh, racing with it, and he put that V twin in it, and he went out and just found that it wasn't the right bike suited for that kind of racing. And he's like, he was going to scrap it. And Suzuki says, no, you need to build it. So he literally gave him all the engineering blueprints and says, you guys build it.
Wow.
And that was your start off for your Hayabusas and your GSXR 1000s. That's where they all came from originally. A lot of the Busa parts are interchangeable on the TLs.
So you like follow the history of the parts and where it all kind of came in. Did you do that because you're buying stuff for your bike and you're like, I want to know the history, or did you just kind of know it and then?
No, it was like the after the fact. Whenever I get a bike, especially if it was used, I want to get some history behind it. I want to know what's available for it. Harley does a great job of making a bike and keeping the longevity of a model so that aftermarket companies can capitalize on that. I mean, you take
That
a
makes sense,
Sportster,
yeah.
you can take a bone stock Sportster off the floor and go home and turn it into a bobber. You can turn it into whatever you want with a lot of bolt-on parts and accessories. Um, but that's due to the fact they've kept their frame and their motors pretty much the same for so many years. My hat's off to them. That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome marketing.
Yeah.
Uh, as far as that goes, when I would get into a bike, and it got kind of how I got into being a technician as far as a paycheck. Um, I've got a computer-aided graphics associate's degree. I was in a sign shop. I was doing graphics for a sign shop, and my brother-in-law, and it just wasn't working out. And all my friends, because not only did I work on my bikes, I worked on all my friends' bikes.
Uh-huh.
And I had done that since back in '86 when I got an FZR 600 from a kid. Started riding that, and I was working on it out in the parking lot of the barracks. And people would ride up and they say, "You work on bikes?" It's like, well, yeah. So every time somebody would bring me their bike, I'd get a book and try to figure out what was wrong and so on and so forth. So I became the my friend. He is he's not a technician, but he works on his own stuff all the time. He does good work. We never have any problems. I had my own tire changer. I had my own paint
Wow. So
booth.
you started building your stuff up because of that.
Well, I just wanted, when I wanted to work on my stuff, I wanted to be able to work on it. I
Oh,
don't,
okay.
you know, I mean, my hat's off to the do-it-yourselfers, but you trying to change a tire on your bike, like on an Indian, because it has the enclosed wheel wells,
Mm-hmm.
one of two things. You either have to lay the bike down and pull it
Ugh.
out, or you're going to have to hoist it up high enough to clear that fender. Because at our shop, that's where, when we work on bikes, we have lifts that have dropouts. So while the bike is sitting there nice and level, it actually drops out from below and we can take the tire straight down. So we don't have to take anything apart.
Wow. Yeah, I've seen people hang their bikes on the ceiling with ratchet straps.
Exactly.
It works, but
It works, but now you've got two ratchet straps and balancing on a front tire that sways, and every time you grab it and try, it's a recipe for disaster at some point.
yeah.
There are aftermarket companies that have lifts out there that will get you by. Like I said, the problem with Indian and those enclosed wheel wells is it's tough to get them out without doing a lot of extra work.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't want to mess with having to get the tire on the rim, take it all off, and then rebalance all that. That's just too much. I'd rather pay the money for that.
Yeah.
Is there something like and I don't obviously whatever you say, it's like, well, I'm then taking business away. You know, like I tell people
Right.
to go do an MSF class or here check out Moto Jitsu or somebody and get their book. That's like taken away from me. But what is it? What would you recommend somebody like first if they want to get into motorcycle maintenance and on their own bike, so they don't screw anybody else's up? But like, what should they start? I mean, oil changes seems pretty easy to do.
They seem easy. Bottom line, get a manual. I mean, the manual will last the life of the bike.
The service manual
Bottom,
or the
yes,
okay.
the service manual. It has torque specs. A lot of people don't know that there are torque specs on the drain plugs. They just think, well, if tight's good, tighter is better. Until you go to take it off and you've destroyed the threads, and now you have to bring it to me, and I have to drill it out and reinsert new threads
Oh
and
wow.
charge you a lot of money when you could have bought a torque wrench, set it to 15 foot-pounds, and wait for the click or the beep.
Yeah.
The other thing is tools. If you're going to work on bikes, get good tools. Um, if you have tools that you use once every 3 years, fine. Get an inexpensive set. I get all my tools from Snap-on and Matco due to the fact that I literally wear them out because I use them so often. My
Oh
six
yeah.
millimeter, I have warrantied out 2 times because it starts to wear down.
Wow, I've
Um,
never had to deal with that. That's crazy.
yeah. Um, cheap, cheap tools aren't good and good tools aren't cheap. So that's
There's
another thing
another
to keep
one.
in
There's
mind.
another one.
Yep.
I love it. Same thing with
Um,
helmets. Same thing with helmets
yep.
sometimes. Jeez.
When we sell bikes, you get a toolkit. On your FTR, you get
Mm.
one Allen wrench that's down by the battery box.
Yep.
That
Yep.
will get you out of trouble. That's not for rebuilding the motor.
Yeah.
Um, that if you do it a lot, you want good tools that are going to last. I have my own Harbor Freight tools that I use for once in a great while
Yeah.
because I only need them once every 6 months or something. And I know what the limitations are of them. I know that if I put it on an air impact, it's going to be a Matco or a Snap-on because I know that it'll crack if it's not.
Mm.
Um, there's certain items on our bikes that are torqued to 250 foot-pounds.
Jeez.
People don't realize that. And it's not the torquing to, it's the breaking loose. You have heat fatigue. Sometimes they have green Loctite, which is like super glue for bolts. You got to heat it up to over 288 degrees before the Loctite will even release.
Wow.
These are things that I know because I have manuals and training that the guy that's trying to change out his driven pulley on his full-size 111 Indian
Uh-huh.
doesn't know, and he's standing there with a pipe trying to break it loose, and he ends up either hurting himself because it slips off.
Yeah.
It's things like this that our training and our labor rates are set for a reason.
Yeah, because I mean, they'll try that with like a cheater bar, hurt themselves,
Exactly.
maybe strip something, and then they bring them to you. And then, but if like they just brought it to you the first time, you already knew what to do. You heat it up, you do all that stuff, and you just kind of
Yep.
it's natural for you.
And all
It
my sockets fit. I'm not taking a metric bike and I've got a big standard socket that almost fits. It's a little loose, but it'll still work because you round that bolt off or that nut off. Now we're in trouble.
yeah. So you have the exact fit to the millimeter, all that stuff.
And like I
Perfect.
said, when these tools start to wear and I start getting a little bit of movement on them, they go right back on the tool truck and I get a brand new one.
That honestly, like that to me says that you take care of your stuff. I mean, I'm pretty sure. I mean, we're not here to like talk bad about anybody, but I'm pretty sure there's some mechanics out there that it's like I can get with the tire. It's like I can get another month or two out of this tool or something, and then now you have a problem, and something happens, and then the guy gets their bike back, and it's just like what the heck. So that's cool. I'm glad that you're doing that. What's like?
Personally,
Oh, go ahead.
personally for me, it's a ethics thing. If I do shortcuts on your bike, I'm not the one that's going to be riding it for the next 6 months to a year. It's
Mm,
your life in my hands after I'm done with it. That's why we always do test rides after to check, make sure everything's functioning on what we work on. And a lot of times we will check other components that we didn't even work on. One of my responsibilities as being the lead tech is spotting things on bikes that most people, even the owners, overlook. I had a customer come in and he was getting a rear tire, and we ended up putting front pads on. He didn't know his pads were down to 10%.
Oh, yeah.
And the problem is if you're ready to change your tire and your pads are 10, 15%, chances are you're going to wear out those pads before you change the tire. So if you're doing the tire and the pads are already off, you might as well do the pads. Now you have a fresh tire and new fresh pads to go with it.
Yeah,
You're
that's
not you're
huge.
not you're not double backing to have pads done, because you're not going to keep looking at the pad. You're going to keep looking at the tires.
What is like something do people like overlook? Like you're saying that they bring in their tire or whatever and they want to get that done, but then you're like, oh man, this, you should probably change or redo.
Yes.
Like what is some of the most common stuff that you typically see?
Most common things I see out of spec or out of adjustment, if it is, we're lucky we have fly-by-wire throttle
Okay.
cables.
Okay.
Um,
Oh wow.
Real, I'll call them motorheads, people that have worked on older models a lot, where you have two throttle cables, one pull, one to release. If you break one, you can figure out how to switch it so that you at least can give yourself gas, and let the spring return the throttle. Clutch, you're done.
Yeah.
I mean, if you break a clutch cable, you're done. You're
Yeah.
sitting on the side of the road. I don't know of anybody that can get a bike rolling, pop it into gear, and then come to a stop or float the clutch to do gear shifts well enough. They're out there, don't get me wrong. Um, Misadjusted clutches. When they're slack in the clutch cable, it will rub. And as it rubs, it starts cutting those strands. I'll have to send you a picture. I was doing an oil change on my Scout. I was lubing the clutch cable and the pivot point, and I see two broken wires hanging off the clutch cable. I was like, oh, I need a new clutch cable. Everybody's like, well, you sure? I was like, yeah. Took 1 week to get the clutch cable in, actually 5 days. When I went to take the clutch cable off, I had 3 strands holding it in place.
Oh my gosh. So you knew,
That's
right?
how
You knew.
quick.
Yeah.
Yes, that's how quick they can
Wow.
go bad.
This is just so cool because like I'm thinking like in terms of you come from your point of view is motorcycle maintenance, but you'll also bring in the safety part. Like that's something
Very
I'm
much.
missing personally. Like I focus on the skills, the mental skills, the gear, the human body. And I think I personally neglect a little bit of the actual bike being a big thing. So, dude, I'm learning a lot. Like,
I want
obviously,
return customers. That's what I want. I
yeah,
want you to come back every time. You know, like I said, I did front brakes on a guy that was getting a rear tire. Um, and he goes around, he says, go to Indian, go see Scot. They always overlook the whole bike, and we do. And it's a checklist that we have that Phil and I have sat down and gone over, and we add to it, believe it or not, on a regular basis when we start finding things that seem like they're being overlooked that should be checked. Not only to remind me that's been doing it as a paycheck for 6 years, but just to reiterate, you know, check the tires, check the clutch, check the belt, check the fork seals. A lot of times people will come in and they want this, and we find other things that are wrong. They had no idea,
yeah.
or they didn't know it was out of spec.
I think as a consumer or somebody that brings in their bike, when I hear that, the first thing to my mind is like, oh, it costs more money. But then I personally know from safety standpoint, it's like, well, it's needed. It definitely is needed, and I should be spending this money to take care of this. But I like the fact that you come from that safety standpoint. It's like, hey, I'm not here to tell you, hey, you need this because I want to work on your bike, get more hours or whatever it is.
Not
Let's
at
see,
all.
I don't even know that. But you come from it like, hey, I have 3 cables or 3 strands on my clutch cable, and I know that if it's gonna break, I'm done. I couldn't even imagine like it snapping and then you're trying to slow down and stop. I mean, that thing's just gonna shut down on you and stall, and you're gonna have problems, dump the bike, crash, whatever it is.
If you ever want to try it on the range, the easiest way to do it,
Uh huh.
be riding along in a gear, kill the motor, but don't turn it back on and try to stop.
I'll do
without
that.
touching the clutch.
I'll do that when I have full protection on my bike.
You might want to do it in the dirt too, just so it'll slide a little easier.
That's one thing that I would tell new riders, or not necessarily riders, but only new riders, if they want to practice their clutch, get a car or a vehicle with a clutch, and then do that in the dirt, because you'll spin those tires. You won't skid and jump back and forth.
Yep.
That's how I learned. Actually,
Right.
Matt, he's like, he had a Toyota Tacoma back in the day. He's like, hey, you want to drive? I'm like, I don't know how to drive stick. He's like, well, you're gonna find out. And I drove home. Like it was, and I was like, what the. And then I got a truck that had it. And I think that's why he did it, because I was getting a truck that had it. And he's like, you got to learn. This is how you're going to learn. So it scared the crap out of me. But that's him.
Yeah, uphill starts are always the worst.
Oh, you're all rolling back like crap. Yeah.
Brake, clutch, gas.
And a lot of people have that problem with bikes too. And and that's something I try to teach people. But hopefully, I mean, it's Tucson. There's some hills here, but Yuma, I never had that problem. There's no hills anywhere. So.
Right.
So the
luckily for me, I've ridden pretty much every Indian that's ever been in Tucson at one point or time, at least once.
Yeah.
So I ride other makes, models, so on and so forth. So between clutches, reaction times of how far into the throttle do I need to be, how quick will I hit a power band, what kind of lean angle do I have on this bike? How hard do I need to lean it? Do I need to lean it at all? Is it a drive around the corner, or is it a lean around the corner type bike?
I never thought of that. Lean or drive around the corner. Yeah, that makes sense. Because when I test rode those bigger bikes,
the longer the rake, you're not going to lean. You're just going to roll it around the corner.
Yeah.
I've ride so many varieties of bikes on a regular basis. I pretty much have to know how to work their bike before I even get out of the parking lot, or else I'll stall it and create a hazard on the roads. You have to adapt super quick.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what the whole demo ride stuff, that's what I like about it, is that you're trying something different, but you do it every day. So it's you get like a demo ride every day. That's cool, man. So I mean, you said you test out the bike after you worked on it, and it's not always an Indian. So I mean, like somebody will bring in I mean, not necessarily always a Harley, but like some random bikes.
Honda Shadows, Ducati Diwali, Triumphs, Suzuki's of all different types, Boulevards, sport bikes, Gixxers.
Damn. Yeah. So you be test riding a bike after you fix it. You're like, man, I really like this bike. I'm gonna go buy one.
Yeah. I get the best shopping market available because I can ride everything. And I've had bikes where it's like, I'm on the test ride. It's like, I can't wait to get off the shop because this thing is so uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's crazy, man.
I also have to take into consideration these bikes are set up for that person.
True.
If they're shorter, taller, heavier. I get on a bike that's set for a heavier person that's in his higher 200 weight and stuff. I cannot change it to my weight, go out and ride it. I have to adapt to their height or their weight. And it's like you hit the bumps with a bike that's set for 285-pound rider, and I'm not quite there. I mean, it's bone jarring.
It's not like setting the seat back and pulling the steering wheel up like the other. Yeah. So I mean, like with all those like different modifications and different size people and everything, like, do you recommend, like from a mechanic standpoint, do you recommend people like changing things out, like, you know, getting better suspension, changing their seat out to match how they sit instead of being super far back because they're short? What is your idea about that? Like, should people just do that? Would it mess you up?
It's probably down the same line as you as an instructor for rider safety. You do not want to ride a bike that is uncomfortable.
Okay.
You're going to be agitated. You're going to be tense, and you know, tense riders crash sooner than relaxed riders. When you get a bike that you get on it, and you're like, oh darn, I got to stop for gas again, as opposed to, okay, it's been 45 minutes. Let's stop and get gas so I can get off this bike. I mean, that's either change the bike or change the components on the bike so that you don't want to get off the bike. That when you sit on it and you ride it, a lot of the bigger Indians, the Chieftain and the Roadmasters, and now this Challenger, they're going to come out with seats that are made for long hauls. For me personally, try to ride them in town. Usually they have a wider seat base
Mm-hmm.
to give you more support when you're sitting still for so long. When you're in the city and you keep putting your feet down for stoplights and turns and braking, it cuts into my leg and it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable. But if I was to go down a highway for a 205 mile an hour, 250-mile trip, it'd probably be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Have you told people, like, have they come in? They're like, man, like, I'm here for my tires, but they just maybe say something, hint at you that this is just uncomfortable. Like,
yes,
it's like, do you guys have a different seat, or do you have different bars? Could you do this? Or this is my idea. Like, do you walk them through that too? Or do you recommend? Like, do you
we
literally tell them?
recommend 9 times out of 10, our downfall are forums where the internet
Yeah.
experts have done all the research and they know a guy at Dunlop or they know a guy at Indian or they know a guy at Power Commander and they have all this information and that's what I want. And I've seen people do it before and it didn't work out too well. And I warn them, I was like, I've seen this before, it didn't work out too well. Oh, well, I know. It's like, you're the customer and you are always right. And I will go behind that.
Yeah.
So, yes, it happens. A lot of people, and I don't know if it's my position or my personality. I had a customer come in, Scott, what do you think of this air cleaner? And I looked at it, and I probably should have thought a little bit before I said anything. I looked at it, I was like, that is the ugliest thing. I would never put that on my bike. He's like, well, I think it's cool. And it's like, that's your personality. You go ahead. And management got a little upset with me. You can't say that. It's like, he asked me, I gave him my opinion.
Yeah.
And a lot of my customers, they know they're going to get the truth. It may not be what they want to hear, but they get the truth from me, at
That,
least my opinion.
there's something to be said
And
about that. There's
yes,
definitely something to be said about that.
I'm not a salesman by any means. I am a safety conscience technician. I want you back. I want you to say, I want to say, I prefer, as tire brands go, I prefer Dunlops.
Okay.
That also comes from the sport bike world. I always liked Dunlop.
Okay.
Not to say that I haven't tried other brands and got exceptional wear out of them. My problem was with one brand, but I had in a sport bike, you get 5,000, maybe 6,000 out of a rear tire and close to 8 to 10 on a front tire on a sport bike. I actually got like 12 out of the rear and almost 18 out of the front. I also maintain my tires, which is a huge thing for me. People on these Indians, on most of them, they have tire pressure monitors on them.
Okay.
As soon as it rolls, you will get a triangle with an indicator in it that says you have low pressure. Customers come in and says, yeah, I might need a little air. Every time I take off, my low tire light comes on. But after I ride it about 10 miles, it goes away.
Yeah, he heats up a little
Yeah,
bit.
and it
Yeah.
expands and
Yeah.
puts the right amount of air in there. If you look in your manual, it says fill it to 36 in the front cold, not after you've ridden 10
Yeah.
miles. And I've had people say, well, do I check them after? No needs. You have heat in them now.
Yeah.
The air pressure has varied. Should I do nitrogen? You can if you want, but if you ever add regular air from an air compressor again, you just nullify the nitrogen. The only thing nitrogen is good for is if you're in a high humidity area,
Okay.
because that's what expands inside the tires, not the actual air. It's the humidity that's mixed with the air in the tire. The
Oh.
humidity expands and creates pressure. Nitrogen has very little, if any, air or moisture in it. Therefore, it does not expand and contract as much. That's why the GP Moto guys run nitrogen in there, because they don't want to have to do 5 laps before their tires come up to pressure.
That makes sense. I'm used to from the SCBAs filling up SCBAs and just knowing that the friction, the mechanical friction on the inside of the SCBA, the tank, and all that stuff. But yeah, that makes sense for the tires because it's exposed to outside elements basically. Like I mean, how you're filling it up too. Because we had huge things for SCBAs.
Yeah, and the way you know is when anybody puts nitrogen in tire, they put green twist caps on, and then you know. So if somebody rolls in and says, hey, I need air in my tires, And I look down and I say green. I say, you got nitrogen in there. And he's like, yeah. It's like, if I put my air in there, it's going to nullify the nitrogen.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe I'll just swing by whoever did it and get it taken care of. It's like, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah. Can you get those TPMS things for like, let's say an older bike that doesn't have a computer system? Like, is
Matter of
there?
fact, you can. They
Yeah.
sell them online. They twist on instead of the valve stem caps,
Uh-huh.
and you can Bluetooth it right to your phone. You can get them in sets of 2, 3, and 4.
Wow. So I'm gonna recommend everybody go grab some of those because I have a feeling that nobody checks their tire pressures enough, and then hopefully that's gonna help them out.
My biggest silent laugh I get is they come in for their first service, 500 miles.
Mm-hmm.
They may not ride every time. That's fine. They come in, I say, your tires were low. But I only put 500 miles on them. But, sir, you've had it for a month and a half.
Yeah.
And he's like, but it's OEM. I was like, yes. And you
That was
can
probably
lose,
me. That was probably me.
you can lose up to 5 psi in 2 weeks out here in Arizona.
5 psi in 2 weeks. So you definitely want to check your tires at least bi-weekly or
Yes,
twice a week.
at
Yeah,
least.
once every 2 weeks. There you go.
Or at least before every ride. Granted, letting it sit there and letting it drop down and tire pressure creating flat spots is
Yeah.
not good for your tire. But yeah, every 2 weeks, whether you're riding or not. The other thing is battery maintenance.
Okay.
This state does not do well with the batteries.
I'll say I changed out my Harley batteries like once a year. It sucked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It did. And it's nothing against what you did. You can still hook it up to a battery tender.
Yeah, I did too. That was crazy.
Heat kills batteries. As far as hooking up a battery tender, inexpensive battery float chargers are not good for them. What they'll do is they constantly send a low voltage charge into the battery.
Okay.
It will not blow up the charger, but what it does, it heats up the electrolytes, or not the electrolytes, the battery acid. It heats up the battery
magic.
acid.
It's the magic.
Yes. The Einstein fusion reactor thing. It heats that up and it actually boils the components out of it and overheats the battery, and it vents, and then the water level or liquid level drops, and now you don't have the reaction on all the plates, and you have what they call dead cells or weak cells. Get a good battery charger, and the new ones actually will charge up the battery even if you ride. I have 3 bikes, like you said. I will alternate it week to week between the ones. So it goes in and charges the battery up. A couple hours later, it'll send a signal, and if it gets a full charge back, it shuts down even though the light's still green. It's not adding more voltage.
So yeah, I was gonna say because my bike came with the hookup, the little battery tender hookup. So like,
Battery tender pigtail.
What would you recommend for then one of those? Because like I probably have a cheap one, to be honest. It's not good.
Battery tender makes a good one.
Okay.
They also make an indoor, like if you have it in an enclosed area, garage, something. They also have an outdoor one that is weather resistant. Doesn't mean that you can leave it out in the monsoon.
Yeah. Okay.
But any moisture, dust, or
yeah. I got one of those then. Cool.
I actually have an IQ Genius. It works over 4 different types of batteries, including lithium ions.
Oh.
And lithium polymers, lipos. I also have a cool function. You can do it 3 times in the life of a battery, do a repair, provided you have fluid in it, of course. The problem with sealed batteries now is you don't know how much fluid's in there. But what happens is a sulfate gets built up on the plates, and the liquid can't get to it and create the electric reaction. And what this does is it drains the battery. Instead of just sending one current charge, it sends in pulses and knocks that sulfate off so that you have a surface again to create the electrical charge.
Dude, you like know way too much. Like I'm trying to follow, and I kind of can because of just my own experiences. But man, this is a lot of information for like somebody trying to get into it. But it's good information. It's stuff that you need, and it's something that I talk about with safety itself. It's like, this is why, this is how, and this is what. I mean, you go through all of that instead of just staying with this is what you should get, and then
yeah,
this
get
is
the
good.
salesman. Yeah, instead of a salesman attitude, it's what's best for you and your bike. I mean, not everything is suited for this person. I mean, what you need for your tires could be different than what I need for my tires,
Yeah.
depending on how I ride to what you ride.
Yeah.
Even though we have the exact same bike for the most part.
Yeah, that's why I bought my bike, is because you got the first one, so that I know if I ever take it in, you know what you're doing. Oh man, yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. I'm trying to think of all the stuff that I brought into you, and I brought in my Harley one time, and there's so many broken things. Oh, there we go. What is something that you see typically broken on a bike? We talked about overlooked, but like, do you see a lot of snapped like levers and all these other things?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yep. You see a lot of oopses, you know,
oopses.
where the lever is now conformed so that your fingers don't slip off anymore. We call them
uh,
racing racing levers now because your hands won't slip off when you're shifting and braking. Um, and people get so mad. It just fell over and the lever broke. Well, that's what they're made to do, because if that lever breaks at that little indentation, it doesn't destroy your clutch perch, which now you have to get a whole another reservoir.
yeah.
These things that break easily are made to break easily, so you're not changing major components.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Because
Something
I've broken levers before.
exactly. And then they grind them down and they keep riding them.
Yeah,
Now
it's a shorty lever.
now you're replacing the perch when you go down next time, if you
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Something like on our FTRs, I'm still looking for. I want to get frame sliders.
Mm.
Like you
RNG
said,
makes them, man. RNG, they make
you
them.
found them that fit.
I found them. They made them specifically for the FTR.
Awesome.
I got the front axle one. I just bought two sets, or just two, because I want to see how easy they fit. But yeah, they actually have ones that go through the frame, towards the outside, and it's really cool.
That bottom right frame trellis piece.
Dude, you're throwing out trellis. What's a trellis? No, I'm just kidding. But in the front axle, you know how it goes all the way through. I got that one on.
All right.
And then there's another one where it doesn't go all the way through the frame itself. I know on the right side, it's right above the little heat, the exhaust, whatever.
Okay.
Anyways, it's right above that. But you have to lift the bike up. That's why I haven't done it yet. You have to lift the bike up to reduce tension on the motor to the frame, and then you pretty much drill it to each side. There's one on this side and one on this side, different length bolts, and it sticks out pretty good and it looks good. RNG, they make them, and then they have other ones like for the rear, and then they have some for, they have a lot. I'm gonna probably buy more of those.
Okay.
But yeah, dude, they make them. And then RNG, shoot, they're a reputable company, so I stuck with that. Yeah.
I'll take a look at that. I actually had some left over from my TL, and what I was looking for is where the motor hooks to the red frame is an engine bolt that hooks near the top. And I found something that fit into that actual frame piece, and all I needed was a longer bolt, and then put my actual slider on the outside. With ours, with the FTR, people say, "Oh, well, here's your tank. All you need is that much." Well, no, my radiator is all the way out here, so.
yeah, I know, dude. That was another thing about RNG. I bought their oil cooler, metal mesh protector for the front. Yeah. And then I also got a radiator mesh protector for the front too. So I bought a few things from them. Dude, I recommend them.
Good. I'll take a look at the site.
They shipped from London, and it got here in 5 days. So
wow.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. I had to pay in pounds or whatever it is over there.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah, I'm all about what's best for the customer and the bike. Sometimes my shop doesn't have it, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. We have specific vendors that are credited straight to us. I can get helmets. Cheaper through the shop. But the style and what I want for my Challenger, I can't really get through the shop, because I'd have to actually have the rep come in with a bunch of them, try them all on, and buy them. And I don't want to waste his time.
Yeah.
I can go to another place here in town that sells gear for cycles and get a helmet And I like the guys. You know, I
Yeah.
know there. I've been to bike nights. I went to the next bike night after you went when you took your FTR, and everybody was checking it out and
Yeah,
stuff.
dude,
So
everybody loved the FTR. Everybody loved
yeah,
it there. They're like, what the heck is that thing? I had that Christian rider group. Like, they're like, what is that? Because they all
yeah.
probably rode Harleys. And I'm like, it's the Indian. It's the Indian
Well, they ride
FTR.
cruisers for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
But that's
what's the
cool because
longest trip?
with
What's
the
the
longest
longest
trip,
taken so far?
uh, on this thing, probably it was the Phoenix when I took my total control class. Yeah,
Okay.
I took the total control. It was a lot of fun, but I mean I had to ride it there, and I remember asking you, I was like, how was it? Because you rode to Phoenix too,
Yep.
and you're
Yep.
like
I rode to Mason back.
it was doing this little thing with the way the tires are set up,
Yep. The tire
and
pattern.
I didn't get too uncomfortable like you said you did. I did feel the heat, but it was welcome because it was cold when I rode.
Okay.
So I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
But I wasn't, I was uncomfortable. I think I wasn't uncomfortable riding, but when I got home and I tried to walk, it was one of those things like, oh man, I'm bow-legged right now.
Yeah. For
And,
me, I rode up and riding sport bikes. I always took a break at Casa Grande,
uh-huh.
and regardless, and I'd top off my tank and then finish the trip either way. When I headed up, it was just natural. I got off at Casa Grande. I drank some of my water and stuff, and texted, told everybody where I was at, make sure they knew I was safe. Finished the ride, did what I had to do in Mesa, and I thought, you know what? It only took like a gallon of gas to get here,
Yeah.
even with the top off. I was like, I'm just going to top it off. I'm going to ride it straight through all the way back to
Yeah.
Tucson. And I hit like Marana. And I'm like, all I want to do is get off this bike. I
Yeah.
am so tired and sore right now.
Yeah. I'm so glad it had cruise control on it, though. I was
Yes,
able to take my hand off and relax that one a little bit and then go back to it. It's a pretty comfortable bike. I wonder how it will feel with like a windshield and the whole rally package that they have. And
hmm
I think that's cool about a lot of bikes is that you can do those little adjustments. Especially I mean you were talking about how Harley they've had that model for so long and the aftermarket support is massive. And that's
exactly.
one thing I really liked about my Sportsters. I changed it from stock, cafe, scrambler, kind of with touring with bags on it, but it was just cool. I think it was
Yeah.
just really cool. What's like the craziest bike you've ever worked? Not craziest, I shouldn't say that. That's kind of weird. But like the rarest or coolest bike you've ever worked on. You're like, man, that is badass.
Oh, that's an easy one. And sadly, it's nothing that I don't usually work on. It was just modified to the hilt. Lloyd from Lloyd's Cams and Aftermarket Products,
Uh huh.
they did a video where they did the Thin Blue Line, and they started in San Diego and
Uh
they
huh.
were going all the way back to North Carolina. And he came in and he had an Indian with a supercharger on it.
What?
Yes.
Holy crap!
And the gentleman that owned Charlotte Indian had a 121 motor in his.
What kind? What? How big? Like, what was the model Indian that he had? Was it
Just a regular Chieftain.
just regular Chieftain? It's Super
Yeah,
121, isn't it? Like 117? Like what you guys?
116.
116. Okay.
So they
So
come
one.
with a 111,
Uh huh.
and then I do a big bore kit, which makes it 116 cubic inches.
And this guy had a 121 supercharged.
No, he had a
Oh,
121, and then Lloyd's had his. There was a supercharged, might have been a 116 supercharged.
that's.
Yeah.
And did you work on it, or he just came by?
Well, I was working on the one that had the 121 in
Uh
it,
huh.
and he's like, I got to change my clutch springs. And I see him pop the thing over, and he gets ready to put the socket to it. And I says, what are you doing? Now, this is a guy that is really well known in the motorcycle community for these bad aftermarket parts that everybody loves.
Uh huh.
I was like, what are you doing? You can't do that. You have to do this, this, and this before you do that. He's like, really? I was like, yeah, you will strip that bolt out. He's like, oh, okay. And everybody kind of looked at me like, you just questioned Lloyd. And I'm like, he was going to break his bike.
That's so cool. Did it sound like crazy? Like when you.
Oh, yeah. When you opened it up, the 121, You could feel the power. Um,
Through the ground on your feet. No, I'm just
yeah, shake the whole place.
yeah.
The takeoff was about the same, but the power band, when people say power bands, that's that oh shit feeling that you get,
Mm.
when you hit it. And some of them they go up and then they go down, and some of them go up and then down, and some of them go up, down like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's like an on and off almost. Um, the power band on that jumped quick and went up a little bit and then dropped off fairly quickly. But that has to do with cams, timing, ignition, fuel delivery, size of intake manifold. There's just so much. You can't. I crack up. People put a cold air intake. I had a 10 horsepower. No, put it on a dyno. Let's see if you got like 2. You can't bolt things on and add horsepower.
Well, you could put stickers on though.
Yes.
You could put
Yes.
flame.
You get it's the dimple effect. It's like a golf ball. So if you have a semi-contour surface, the air flows more freely over it and creates a vortex so you go faster.
So we need to make textured stickers and be like, see, these other stickers that are flat, they don't offer the same horsepower we do.
Big 2x4, 12 by 24 inch Dan the Fireman sticker on the side of your bike will make you go faster.
Oh, just this side though. I mean, if you have to get 2 of them to put them on both sides.
Push. Yeah, you don't want to push or anything out of your lane.
Oh my gosh, that's a good idea. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go ahead and start working on that. What is and I'm throwing these and I don't like doing the interview thing, but I mean I'm throwing these questions. Cool. I don't think we went over it, but like, what is the most reliable bike you think? Like that from mechanics. Well, of course it is a mechanic standpoint. Most reliable bike. There's a lot of bikes, so.
Before Indian, and I'm not just saying that because I work on them. Honda and Yamaha.
Yamaha.
And they were, when I was going to school at Motorcycle Mechanics Institute, you have your core classes, which are about 9 months, and then you have make specific. And I had Honda and Yamaha lined up because they take you into detail in their brand alone.
Okay.
And when I got out of Honda, not only could I work on their Honda motorcycles, I could work on their Honda generators, and I could work on their Honda ATV and their Honda and snowmobiles. It was crazy.
Wow. So they made it like, so
Honda.
You work on this. Yeah. So it's just Honda.
Yeah.
So even their lawnmowers.
Literally, they had one lawnmower there for us to play with if we wanted to tear the motor apart.
Don't they have like pianos too? Can you work on a piano?
I don't think I could tune them.
No. That's cool. When it comes to reliability though, like is it like the manufacturer made it reliable, or is it the owner making it reliable by keeping up preventative maintenance, or like I don't even know. Like
they kind of all go hand in hand.
Okay.
You take a car and you buy it and you drive the wheels off it, never change oil, never change the air cleaner. Yeah, it's going to be unreliable.
Yeah.
Every bike, my girlfriend asked me, she's like, well, how long will a bike last? Longer than most people, usually, if they're maintained.
That's true. Yeah.
Proper air pressure, maintaining your brakes and your pads. And that's more for safety.
Yeah.
The 3 things I never chintz on are things that make me go, things that make me stop, and things that make me steer.
There you go, another one. Jeez, you're all for all these idioms or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I don't skimp on tires. I don't skimp on brakes. I don't skip on chains or belts. And I always make sure that my levers work.
So all the primary controls.
Yes.
Perfect.
I mean, you want to put little rivets and spikes on your bike, fine, as long as they don't impale you if you do go down.
That's true. I've seen some custom like gas tank caps, and it's
Filler
just like
caps.
They're like all pointy. It's like, oh man, imagine going over that with your junk. Yeah. When you hit this like
the spear handle grips. My tech actually stood up and cut his head open on it.
Really? Oh,
yeah, he wasn't going down the road.
Oh my gosh!
I teased him. I said, "You need to wear a helmet while he worked."
Is there like, well, speaking of like motorcycle safety when it comes to the mechanic, then like, is there like something that if I was to work on my bike at home,
Mm-hmm.
like outside of tools, like we're gonna get some really good tools, all that stuff. Like, what should I be concerned about, like
Second
safety
person.
wise?
Second person.
Second
Have
person.
somebody readily available, even if they're just sitting there playing on their phone. If you get in trouble, you can't reach your phone because your phone's over here.
Oh yeah,
The bike falls on you, you're trapped.
that's true. Holy crap, dude! You're like, you have all this safety and mechanical information I never even thought of. This is good.
Well,
This is cool.
52 years old, you learn a few things.
Maybe more.
Retaining it might be a different thing.
Yeah, you probably lost more information than I've ever gained when it comes to motorcycle mechanic stuff.
Nah, if you quit learning, you might as well quit working.
Yeah, that's
You'll learn
true.
something new all the time.
So you're actively looking for stuff then, like you hear about something coming down the pipeline. Do you like actively research it, or is it
Yes.
like okay? And then
I
on
have
top of
training
that,
videos. Yeah,
okay,
I have training videos that pop up. I have to be qualified on. Um, Service bulletins. We'll get service bulletins in randomly for vehicles. Two people have to have taken and passed the quiz at the end of the service video in order
uh,
for us to even order parts before we can start performing them.
wow. So like you could make or break like maybe a dealership or not maybe just you, but like the mechanics themselves.
Management could make or break a dealership if they
Okay,
don't stay on their techs.
okay,
They're kind of lucky with me. I check mine weekly.
okay.
And I'm usually the voice of information. It's like, hey, we got a new video. Hey, this is a new update. Our digital wrench, our interface that works with our computers to all our bikes. There's a new update. Everybody update your computers. I just have a routine that I go through, and it just makes life simple for me and everybody else in the shop.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, there's just so much stuff I didn't even know that came down to.
Well, we can always do a part two.
Yeah, well, we're definitely gonna do a part two, man. Definitely gonna do a
We
part
need to
two.
do one on the road.
Yes, a little dual vlog going on. You got the 360 camera now. You
Yep.
got all that stuff. We got both FTRs. I mean, I've technically ridden with your FTR before. I mean,
Yeah.
Matt took it to the DGR.
Yep.
So I'm done. We don't have to. No, I'm just kidding.
We need to do an off road. I haven't been off road yet.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to get a dirt bike so bad. Just like a small, or maybe even like a dual sport, like the KLX 250 or something. Just let's like just go because I
Right.
actually am kind of scared about taking my FTR off road, like off road.
Once again, it's just like riding on road. Respect the bike, respect the power, know your limitations. You're
Yeah.
not going to do a hill climb with the FTR. It's not built for that. But
Yeah.
if you want to ride down a 2-track, cool, you know?
Yeah, yeah, easily. That would be a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff out here that are like that.
Yeah.
And you just go slow if you have to, and then just enjoy it.
Yeah. Originally being from Michigan, I had dirt bikes as a kid growing up and worked on my own bikes. My dad made me. He's like, you're out in the woods and your bike breaks down. What are you going to do? Just walk away from it and come get somebody? He's like, see if you can fix it.
And that's where it started.
Yep. And the key thing that my dad always taught me, something would go wrong with my bike. And I said, it's not doing this now. He's like, what'd you do to it last? He wasn't looking to place blame. He was looking to see where to possibly start, where the problem might be.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be something as random as somebody comes in, my bike won't start now. Okay. Well, let's do bike won't start. Will it not power up? Nope, it powers up. Okay. We've had people say, my bike won't start. And you turn the key on or you hit the key fob and there's no power. Well, there's no power. Yeah, it won't start. Well, that's a little different. We can start at the battery there as opposed to the starter. So then you'll get no power, crank, no start, no crank, and then you'll get, like I said, crank, no start, which now we've really eliminated a lot of items from it. And people can do this. I've gone down the road and being the type of person I am, not necessarily the job, I'll see a motorcyclist over to the side of the road. I've done it numerous times. One instance, I was going down Houghton, heading to my old house. Guy sitting on the side of the road, and I see him doing this, looking around his bike, and I was like, I wonder if everything's all right. So I quick pulled over, and I walked up from a distance, told him who I was, where I worked, so he didn't feel threatened.
Yeah.
And
It's like, this guy's going to steal my bike.
Yeah, he's gonna roll me for my bike. I was like, so what happened? He says, I don't know. I was riding along and it just quit running. I was like, all right, can I ask you what you did last? And he says, I put gas in it. I was all right. Where did you get gas at? Because he could have gotten bad gas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, he's like, oh, such and such. I, being from the area, knew that it was a reputable place. I was like, so you were riding along and it just shut down. I was like, did the lights go up? He says, no. He says, just the motor quit. I said, all of a sudden? He says, yes. I was like, can I try to start it for you? He's like, well, I got my buddy coming here, but sure. So I walked over, I turned the key on, and I didn't hear a fuel pump, and I didn't hear any relays go off.
Gosh,
and I looked
that's
over.
crazy.
He had accidentally hit his kill switch, didn't even know it, and stopped the bike. I flipped the kill switch down, hit the start button, and it started right up. What'd you do? I was like, you accidentally hit your kill switch. Well, I feel like an idiot. I was like, well, be that as it may, it still runs. Call your buddy, tell him to cancel the truck and the trailer, and go ahead and finish on it. He's like, thank you so much. He's actually been into the shop a couple of times just to thank me again, so he wasn't stranded at dark.
That is awesome, dude. That is awesome. Like that, and I try to equate it to my firefighting stuff, but it's just like we'd get calls like that too. You know, it's like something happened, like please come help me, and then it's like, well, this is the small problem, and you fix it. And I'm sure you're having the same feeling of I'm glad it was the kill switch, and not something major where you're on the side of the road hurt, or you have
dark,
massive, or
and, you know, and you got no power, so you can't turn any lights on to let people know you're there. And had another incident. I was actually driving one of our Slingshots and seen a Harley bagger sitting off. Now, I'll be right honest with you. I don't know a whole lot about Harleys. My number one source of information left the shop, and he now works for the post office. I pulled over. I said, maybe there's something I can do. Maybe I can even give him a ride, you know, someplace. So I pulled over, and I walked up to him, and he is the president of, I can't think of the name, but now it has something to do with child abuse.
Okay.
Or no, Abate.
Okay. Yeah.
He's the president of Abate, and he says, my transmission went. And I says, really? I was like, how do you know it was your transmission? He's like, well, I was going along, I heard a big bang, and then I could rev the motor, but nothing happened. I'm like, oh, okay. And I had my work shirt there, and I had my flashlight, so I grabbed my flashlight out. For whatever reason, I went and I looked at the back. He literally broke the belt off of his bike, his drive belt.
Oh my gosh.
And I says, well, you're not going to go anywhere without a drive belt. Are you kidding me? And he walked around. He said, I got one of those. That'll only take me 20 minutes as opposed to changing my transmission.
Yeah.
It'll take me all day.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, I'm sure they would find that, but it solves, like, for me, it solves a head problem. Like, my problem, like, I'm thinking, it's like, I'm stressed. Yeah, you just solved it. And that's huge. That's huge when it comes to, like, me, and I'm pretty sure anybody else.
Just stopping to see if there's something you can do.
Yeah.
You know? And, you know, maybe they took a bug in their eye or something like that, and they can't see, you know, and they're in a panic.
Yeah.
Just having somebody there to, if anything, look out for them if they are working on their bike. Stand there and be a visual deterrent for people to come too close to people.
Yeah, and I'm sure these both those riders, they would have figured, like I said, figured it out if they kind of relax and then look through every little thing. But from an outside perspective, and you're like, okay, it's not my emergency. I can see it clearly, and I'm looking through my own, I guess, T-clocks or your version of mechanics T-clocks, and just, okay, here, boom, no belt or engine shut-off switch.
Yep.
And that's crazy. Like that will definitely help some people. I mean, if they would just kind of step back and look, okay, now let's go through the process. And one thing that I like what you said was that you listened. You asked these specific questions. Okay, what did you hear? Okay, when I start the engine, I don't hear the pump starting, or this, or I do hear the pump. That right there, I had no clue. Like if I start the bike, I turn it on, and I wouldn't even know like what the noises are. I just know that it's starting up. So that's really cool. I need to learn all that stuff. Or we can just have you on again and tell us more stories, because I love it. I love the stories. It helps out.
That's fine.
I absolutely love it.
That's kind of the nice thing about our shop. Most shops you go to, you never even get to see the guy that works on your bike. Um, I get yelled at a lot because I spend too much time with customers sometimes, and I should spend more at my lift. But when I spend 5 minutes with a customer, I usually keep that customer for the lifetime of their bike through us.
Yeah.
I won't quote times, I won't quote rates. Uh, I will give you my opinions and my, what's the word I'm looking for? My decision. Um, there's no reason to guess and BS people into believing stuff.
Yeah.
I can show you in paper. I can show you I've done it this way 25 times. It works every time.
Hmm. And then you're
Um,
also finding new things too. So I mean,
yes, always.
so you're just building that foundation consistently.
Yep.
Now you have like this massive foundation. It just keeps rising. That's all it is. At the end of the day, it's like just keep adding to your foundation. There's no really anything crazy.
Well,
Um,
probably the biggest highlight I've had lately was uh, our Indian rep came into town and he brought his boss from Minnesota. And he's like, oh, this is Scott. He's like one of the most popular people in Tucson. And the other one is a guy named Dan. He does video blogs.
that's
So
cool.
you and I are the two top personalities in Tucson in their mind.
Oh man, that's badass, dude.
Yeah.
That's badass. Well, we need to get you more on this, and then we need to set up those cameras of yours, get you started. Because I mean, honestly, just listening to just those two stories, I mean, it just only so happened to be about somebody on the side of the road, but I'm sure you have. I want to know more about those people bringing bikes to you before you were a mechanic and all that stuff. I want to
Hmm.
know. We need to get you back on, but
Sure, by all means.
yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna take my kid to the skate park and have some fun over there and watch him do his thing. But yeah, dude, I'm excited. I'm excited
Yeah.
about this. All
Yeah,
right.
cool. Yeah, I got
Awesome.
to go to Cycle Gear and get my girl her own helmet and her own jacket
Very
because
good.
she rode one of my helmets and one of my jackets when I took her for a ride on the Scout and the FTR. And she didn't like the FTR. She felt like she was going to fall off. So she literally squeezed the air out of me by the time I got to the second stop. I was like, no, 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 no. This is not going to work.
Take
You
the
need to
Challenger now.
relax.
Take the Challenger now.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the backrest on and take her for a ride on that after we get her gear.
That's my
Why
plan
can't I just
after. Yeah.
Yeah, why can't I just wear your gear? Because my gear doesn't fit you.
And it has to fit. So let
Yep.
her know that Dan the farmer, the
Well,
safety guy.
I told her the story. I was like, I knew a girl. She had on protection, but she had it zipped down
Hmm.
about a third of the way. And when she went down, it peeled off, and she got road rash all down her chest.
Oof.
Just literally stripped her clothes right off of her.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, same thing with stitching and all that stuff. Oh, we can keep
Hmm.
going. I gotta get going though.
I know.
But that was a lot of fun, man. That was a lot of fun.